Well, welcome back to another one of our studies in Philippians. Today, we're just looking at one verse, Philippians 2:8. So read along with me. And being found in appearance as a man, he humbled himself by becoming obedient to death, even death on a cross. Well, we're continuing with this discussion or challenge, I guess, that Paul is giving to the Philippians regarding how they need to be serving each other and considering each other. And he has chosen, of all things, the most uh, fantastic example of Christ himself. If Christ can do these things, if Christ can humble himself, where does that leave you? How can you say that you cannot do this? Well, it's really a great challenge. And this verse has so much in it, I decided I'd like to just look at it by itself. Now, he says in the first phrase there that Jesus was found in appearance as a man. Now, that doesn't mean he was like an avatar where he just pretended to be or took the form of a man for a period of time, or like in Greek and Roman mythology where the gods would become a bird, or they would become a little old woman or something like that. But that he actually was in every way a man. He took on a human body. Now, this has been a point of discussion in Christianity over the centuries. There's a lot of people who just can't grasp the idea that God could be contained in a human body. Now, because I think, of course, God is so great that he couldn't, be concentrated there. But when we talk about God's infinity, it means he can be not just fill all the universe, but he can fill the tiniest spaces, that he is not limited in any way, going smaller or in getting larger. I mean, there's just no limit to him. But that Jesus came and he became a man. Now, what's of course of note to us, and where we maybe can grasp it a little bit, is that Jesus could have chosen, and we said this last time, could have chosen any number of ways to make his appearance as a man. He could have chosen to become the emperor. Augustus was the emperor when he was born, and he could have come and been the emperor of Rome. And you would think, again, what a great place to disseminate the truth of the gospel. But instead, he took the humblest of places in the most obscure, one of the most obscure places in all the world, to make himself known and to be born and to come and live among us and among a despised people. So he took that, he humbled himself and took this human form, and also it was a form of a slave. He took the lowest place in all of the culture that was there. And one of the reasons we know this is because of really how he died. It's fascinating that Jesus chose this means for his own destruction, if you will, of his physical body. He became obedient to death. Now, think about that. God cannot die. God cannot, he is eternal, and he's the creator of all life. We can't choose about whether we're going to die or not. We just have no choice. If you keep living, if the Lord tarries and he doesn't come back, you're going to die. I'm going to die. There's a 100% fatality rate, as one of my friends likes to say, for those who are on earth. Everybody's going to die. Now we can extend our lives a little bit. We can live healthier lives, so we enjoy the years. Perhaps we can do that kind of thing. But in the end, you can only push death back so far. And that's one of the problems we have with some of these folks of the prosperity gospels, as they talk about you have great health and you'll have all this. Well, okay, you may have great health in the moment, but you're not going to have great health forever. At some point, your heart will stop beating, your lungs will stop taking air in and out, in and out, in and out. It's going to happen. And so we have no choice about that. But Jesus did have a choice. You think about it now, he was both God and man. And so when, he got to that critical moment where he could die or not die. And remember, he prayed to the Father, please remove this cup from me. He knew that in order to fulfill the righteousness of God, that his death was required. But even there there was a way probably that he could get by and out of it. And the thought of that, all that suffering was weighing very heavily upon him. And yet he was obedient. He followed the Father's will, and he chose to be crucified. And in the crucifixion, of all things, it says in that verse, the last phrase, even death on a cross. And again, we've spoken about this before, but we'll say it again, that the cross was something that was so horrible that Roman citizens could not be crucified. It was against the law to crucify a Roman citizen, no matter how great their crime was. They could not be crucified. In fact, it was really reserved for the very lowest of people, the very worst of criminals. And when we speak about that, it was often used for slaves who would run away or lead an insurrection like Spartacus did. And so the crucifixion was called the slave's death. So when Jesus chose this death on a cross, it was, he even in dying, he took the lowest place he could take among the lowest people that existed in the Roman Empire at that time. It's amazing. And it was a death of great shame, although we, for our sake, modestly, we put a kind of loincloth around Jesus when we show him on the cross. In fact, the people were crucified naked. And so there was no end to the humiliation which they faced. It would take sometimes days for people to die. And of course, they would use the bathroom on themselves and all sorts of things. I mean, it was an awful, humiliating, horribly painful, terrible kind of death. And you know, because we've gotten used to the idea of the cross, we don't think too much about it. We make crosses into jewelry, and I don't have any problem with people wearing cross jewelry, you know, a necklace around, well, with a cross necklace around them or whatever. I don't have a problem with that. But the problem is we sometimes can think that defines what a cross is. And a cross was not some beautifully gold covered with jewels kind of thing that we've sometimes have made it in our desire to maybe honor the cross. But it was a horribly painful, awful thing. And again, the shock of the cross, and one reason Paul mentions it here, the shock of the cross is that this horrible death was the way that Jesus chose to die. Imagine now if you saw somebody who had around their neck a necklace with a hangman's noose. Wouldn't that be a shock? Or they had earrings made of a little electric chairs. I mean, what would that be? Or imagine if they had a shirt with a guillotine on it, you know, like they used in France to behead people. You'd say, what horrible thing to have. How gruesome. And yet the cross was gruesome, horribly painful, horribly shameful. And we, unfortunately, because we've seen so much of the cross, we've lost that sense of shame. But the early Christians, I think, would be quite shocked to find out how we use the cross now and how we've smoothed off the splinters and all that kind of thing and made it into what we've made it. I think they'd be a bit shocked. Again, I don't have a problem with people wearing crosses. I think it's a good witness. I've worn crosses before, but we can tend to forget in our desire to look at crosses in this type of way, in the way that they were looked at in the first century. And Paul is saying to the Philippians, they're in that Roman colony where they would know how horrible a cross was as a way to punish somebody. He's saying he chose to be obedient to death, even death on a cross. Amazing that he would come to live in us and among us as a child, as an infant, that he would grow and stay with us, that he would work with us, that he would allow himself to be taken and abused by us, that he would be obedient to death when he could have chosen to opt out of it, that he would choose the means of his death to be the most horrible, shameful, painful way to die. That tells us something about our Lord. And Paul is saying, we are to follow this example of Christ, when we deal with each other, we are to humble ourselves and choose the lowest and sometimes the most painful way in order to witness for him. That's a challenge for you in the next week. God bless you.